Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, what I would like to introduce is an author, very famous American author from a long time ago, a couple hundred years ago, but his name is Mark Twain, and he is most famous for writing two stories. One is The Adventures of Huck Finn, and the other is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. When I was a kid, some 30 years ago, I think those two books were a little bit more popular than they are today, at least in the United States, because I remember watching a cartoon series based on The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. But nowadays, I'm not sure how many young people know about Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. One thing I'm thinking about doing is a read aloud every day for maybe 15 minutes, and I will read Tom Sawyer. And maybe by the time we get through with this quarantine, we will have finished Tom Sawyer. Better yet, maybe we don't get to finish Tom Sawyer because everybody can go back to school and back to work. But that's the idea. So if you would be interested in me reading Tom Sawyer 10, 15 minutes a day, please leave a comment in the comment section. And the reason I can read something like Tom Sawyer is because it's over 50 years old and there's no copyright. So I won't get in trouble for reading another author's work. And you can hear people are walking around upstairs. Sounds like somebody just jumped. So I can't do it with any books that are written today. I might get in trouble. YouTube might ban me for copyright infringement. But Tom Sawyer, I think I can get away with. So this is another article that comes from Newsella, just like the Sacagawea article. And I'd like to break this one down into two parts as well. If you haven't seen the episodes that I did with Sacagawea, I'll put a link up there. You can check those out. And eventually I'm going to relate Mark Twain and Sacagawea in a class assignment. But before we get to that, let's talk about some vocabulary words that might be difficult in this first part of the article. The first word is entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. And I'll put that right up there. Quite a long word, sounds a little French. Entrepreneur. Basically, it's a very fancy way to say someone who starts their own business, an entrepreneur. So also in the description box, I am going to put a link to something called Quizlet, and my students are very familiar with this, but it's a way that you can practice with some of these difficult words. Take a look. There'll be two links in the description box. One for the actual article I'll be reading from, and then the other is the Quizlet, in which you will find many of these words. And the picture for entrepreneur is actually a little girl with a lemonade stand. And technically, you could call her an entrepreneur. The next one, short word, wit. Wit. That is the noun form. You may be more familiar with the adjective form when you are describing someone, and you might call them witty. Witty, almost pronounced with D's, but there are T's there. Witty, witty. We don't say that though. Witty, witty. And that means someone who has really good sense of humor and a really quick, like you might hear quick wit. A quick wit, meaning they can come back with something very quickly, something pretty intelligent, but also quite funny. And it is said that Mark Twain had a quick wit. He could come back at somebody. Maybe they were making fun of him a little bit, and he could get a really quick dig in on them because he was witty. Quick wit. Always with humor, sometimes a little dig at somebody, but not always. The next term I'd like to discuss is national treasure. National treasure describes something or someone that almost everybody in that country really values. For example, in the United States, you could maybe call Mickey Mouse a national treasure. Just somebody everybody can get behind. You're like, yes, that is American. We got Mickey Mouse. Some people may say a basketball player like Michael Jordan, definitely an American, really moved the game of basketball forward. Maybe he's a national treasure. There's another actress, very old actress. She hasn't done a lot of work lately because I think she's almost 100, maybe? She's close to 100, but Betty White. A lot of people will consider her a national treasure. She is definitely witty. She was on a sitcom back in the 80s called The Golden Girls, but it seems everybody loves Betty White, so you could consider her a national treasure. The next one is speculator. And there is that root word spec, which actually means to look, to look. Like if somebody wears glasses, you might hear that referred to as spectacles. They put on their spectacles. If someone is just watching an event, you might hear spectator, spectator. But a speculator is someone who takes a risk. In the article, it's going to say that Mark Twain's dad was a land speculator, meaning he might buy land, could be kind of risky, but then in the future, he will try to make money off that land. So anytime you hear speculator, that is someone who buys a product and then wants to make money on it in the future. So it's often risky. They may buy the land that's a little bit sketchy, there might be a little something wrong with it, but they think they can make a profit really quickly. Sometimes you might hear that with the stock market. If someone is a speculator, they try to buy stocks at a really good price, thinking that they're gonna go up in the future. But there's always a risk when you're talking about speculator, because that risk may turn into them losing money also. Two more. Unexpectedly. Unexpectedly. Well, let's break that word down. Un, the beginning, so you're meaning not. Expect, so when you expect something, you kind of anticipate it, you kind of think that it's going to happen. And then at the end, ly, which lets us know that that is an adverb. An adverb. And I have made a video about adverbs before. Remember, adverbs describe verbs. They describe adjectives, and they also describe other adverbs. But the sentence I'm going to use unexpectedly in, it's actually going to be describing a verb. So how about this? He called me unexpectedly. He called me unexpectedly. So that is describing the way a person called. They didn't know that it was going to come. They didn't know it was going to happen unexpectedly. How about this? A couple weeks ago when the NBA shut down, that happened unexpectedly. Nobody knew that that was going to happen, and it just happened really quickly. And the last one, tenderhearted. Tenderhearted. And that is exactly what it sounds like. You got tender in there, you got heart. So it describes someone, or maybe a dog, maybe a something, as having a tender heart. Tenderhearted, meaning they're very kind, they're very sweet. So you could actually use tenderheartedly as an adverb if you would like. Tenderhearted is an adjective that describes a person or an animal. Maybe the dog is a tender-hearted dog, describing the dog. But you could also say, the dog put his paw on my knee tender-heartedly. So then you're talking about the way, the verb, the way the dog put his paw on someone's knee. Tender-hearted. So this article, again, starts with a synopsis. So we will read that, get an idea of what the article is about. The title is kind of a giveaway. It's about Mark Twain. But then we'll read the synopsis, and then it's actually broken up into 4 different parts, I believe. We have early life, so make sure you read those subheadings. Early life, it's going to be all about his early life. The next one is life in Hannibal, which might not make any sense now, but he actually grew up in a town called Hannibal, Missouri. Very famous for Mark Twain. Anytime I hear of Hannibal, Missouri, Mark Twain, very famous. The next one is Heading Out West. And this is kind of where it connects with Sacagawea. A lot of the same area that Sacagawea discovered, Mark Twain is going to live in and move out to. Although it's about 50 years separating the two. The next one is A Family and Famous Books, which we will read about Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. And then actually two more, so there are 5 parts, 5 subheadings for this article. Later work, it's pretty short, and the last one is Personal Struggles. So already, just by reading those subheadings, we know that he's eventually going to move out west, he's going to write some famous books, and then he's going to have some personal struggles. Authors: Mark Twain. Synopsis: born on November 30th, 1835, in Florida, Missouri, Samuel L. Clemens wrote under the pen name Mark Twain. He was the author of many books, including 2 major classics of American literature, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He was also a riverboat pilot, and I will put a picture of what a riverboat is, journalist, lecturer, entrepreneur, and inventor. Twain died on April 21st, 1910, in Redding, Connecticut. So there you have it. Synopsis. Real quick picture of what this article is going to be about. Early life. Writing grand tales about Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, and the mighty Mississippi River, Mark Twain explored the American soul with wit, liveliness, and a sharp eye for truth. He became nothing less than a national treasure. Born as Samuel Langhorne Clemens on November 30th, 1835, in Florida, Missouri, Twain didn't go by his pen name until years later. He was the 6th child of John and Jane Clemens, and when he was 4 years old, his family moved to nearby Hannibal, a town on the Mississippi River. So I had to read Huckleberry Finn in college, and I've read Tom Sawyer, and like I said, I saw that cartoon of Tom Sawyer growing up. And what Mark Twain does a great job of is describing what life was like in the mid-1800s near the Mississippi River. So that's why some might consider him a national treasure. He wrote about an important time in the history of the United States. It's when the West was just starting to be expanded. Sacagawea, Lewis and Clark had explored it. And once people start moving out there, Mark Twain captured what life was like back then. So remember, Sacagawea explored the West in about 1804. And he was born about 30 years later, but then he would make his name about 50 years later with the story Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. So that's just gonna about do it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I will get to part 2 tomorrow. And then based on the comments, let me know. Tom Sawyer, is that something you would like me to read? I mean, we got some time. I don't know if this quarantine, this shelter in place, which we don't have yet, but we might. I don't know. We got some time. So if people would like me to start reading Tom Sawyer so you can get a feel of what the United States was like back in about the 1850s, just a little bit before the Civil War, let me know. We can see what we can do. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.